My screen and looking
Yes,
all
you're
good?
coming through great.
Okay, all right, thanks. It's so hard when you can't see the um, see the responses. And I'd love to. I don't know if we'll have time, but I hope we can have time for Q&A, just as we did for the last speaker. So I'll try to get through these slides. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. This is my daughter Amara. She has FOXG1 syndrome, which is a ultra rare neurodevelopmental condition. She's 10 now. And many of the symptoms are very similar to Kleefstra syndrome. And as we know that the symptoms are terrible and the diseases are endless. Another advocate told me once that our kids don't have a death sentence, they have a life sentence, and their lives are really hard. So seizures around the care, around the clock management, tons of medications that don't really work well, lots of specialists we're managing. We all know that this is the reality. And what I was faced with when Amara was diagnosed is that rare disease drug development is really inefficient. A lot of the things we do in the research world are terribly inefficient, and we already see that it's not working, right? There's a plethora of rare diseases, over 10,000, and we all know the facts that only 5% have treatments. And the big thing is that it just costs too much, right? 150 million to 1 billion to develop one drug for one rare disease is not feasible. And the fact that it takes so long. So this is really what I was tasked with. I am an entrepreneur by nature. I've started multiple companies. And so really trying to address this, from day one of how do we do things differently? Because if we do things the same way, we know it's not going to work. So the first thing is I started the Research Foundation, co-founded it, and we are about to dose our first patient with a gene therapy. We are running a multi-site clinical trial. We're the first patient foundation to do so. It's a drug that we developed and have taken forward. We've done this in 8 years, and we're doing it for $22 million, and that is the cost to BLA. That's our goal. It might come to 25 million, but this is really the idea to keep it in something that's manageable. And as I was creating this gene therapy and working with my team, it became very obvious that one of the biggest, holdbacks and one of the biggest reasons that drug development is so expensive is the inability to collect clinical data effectively, efficiently. And that really led to the start of Citizen Health, where we are a patient data platform. We have over 350 rare diseases, over 100 advocacy groups now, dozens of pharma companies utilizing the platform. And FOXG1's natural history study and our clinical data is completely based on Citizen, and that's what I'm excited to talk to you guys about today. So again, we need data. Everyone needs data, whether it's clinicians needing better data, researchers, but the problem is we can't get it effectively. And I really want to point out the flaws in the current model. The in-person prospective natural history study does not work for ultra rare diseases. The patient burden is really high. Most of our kids are very severe. The sites are not close to us. It's really too much to ask a family to travel to a site just for research. Most families don't want to do that. Patient surveys, tons of groups do patient surveys, but then when you're submitting for an FDA approval, most of those surveys aren't useful, and you've again burdened patients to take those surveys. And the other big thing of surveys is if it's not longitudinal, if a family is not taking it consecutively, often the survey again has very little value. And then with most research, there is no feedback to patients. There's no benefit. And so you're not going to get a lot of patients coming and wanting to participate in research. The big learning for me is in my community, about 30% of my families would do whatever we asked, whatever research study. The rest were just trying to get through their day-to-day and wouldn't participate. And in an ultra-rare community, you cannot have those numbers. We need to get the full population participating. So you've got to think of better ways to get folks to participate that benefits them day-to-day. So we basically started to build an entirely new solution where we're helping families manage the day-to-day, which I'll get into, while accelerating these drugs in a more seamless way, making it patient-centered, personalizing the insights, and then that helps us get to faster research. So we really kept the end in mind constantly. What do we need to do to actually be able to get to an FDA approval? And again, for us, it was not getting to a clinical trial. We want to make sure that our drug is accessible globally to FOXG1 patients. So we looked at creating a natural history study from Citizen, from medical records. I'm going to show you how we did that. It was important for us that each patient's natural history should be their own placebo. We knew that we could not have a placebo. And this is the big one. We also knew that we could not have a separate phase 3 clinical trial. Ultra-rare diseases cannot afford a phase 3 clinical trial. If you have to have a phase 3 trial, forget it. You cannot get a drug approved for an ultra-rare community. So we knew that is what we were dealing with, and that's what we had to build for. So one thing that's very obvious is all of our patients are interacting with the medical system constantly. We have multiple specialists. We're in and out of ER. There's a lot of very rich information in that medical record. It's just very hard to capture. And the big shift that we did for FOXG1 is the prospective in-person study is our add-on. We're about to dose our first patient for a gene therapy, a gene replacement therapy. We haven't even started our prospective study. Our prospective study is super narrow. It's only looking at a couple endpoints, and we're not even starting it yet. So this is really important. And the reason for that is if our prospective study fails, which we know we have a high chance because getting patients to come in, we know there's going to be dropout, it doesn't matter. Our approval is not based on our in-person study. It's based on our natural history from medical records. So this is how it works. Using Citizen, this is what Citizen does. Patients come on, we collect the entirety of the medical record. We do not have BLA agreements with different sites. We actually have TurboTaxed a really manual process. We use each patient's HIPAA right of access to go and collect the entirety of the record. So we literally send an eFax and we get all of the unstructured data back either by eFax or dropped into a portal. So all of the PDFs, we can get images, EEG tracings, etc. We put that in a portal and give it back to patients first and foremost, so they get access to all their records. We've then created an AI advocate, which I'll show you really quick, which helps patients day to day. And this is really critical because you have to help patients day to day if you want them to come and join a platform. And then the data that we extract from those medical records is what powers research. So just to give you an idea for FOXG1 syndrome, we had a 99.8% collection rate for patients whose medical records, the entirety of the medical record, we sought out to collect. We had 101 FOXG1 patients join over 6 months. Our patient population is only 600 in the United States. By the time we file for BLA, we'll have about 250 patients with their full medical record extracted that we could submit. So that's a very large part of our population. If you think of an in-person study, there is no way that we would be able to get those numbers of patients to come over such a longitudinal amount of time. There's 4,000 hospitals that are represented in those 101 patients, and we've retrieved 1.5 million data points. This is the other really interesting insight from getting medical records. In-person studies have a list of questions they're asking. With the medical record, there's no limit. We collect so much information, so it's a really rich database. And we share back. So any dollar that is we gain, our business model is we license the de-identified data to pharmaceutical companies. We actually share that back to the advocacy group and to patients. So again, there's immediate value coming back. Okay, so let's get into how we powered our research from the medical record. So I'm going to show you a couple examples and then actually what we submitted in our IND to the FDA. So first, it was really easy for us to create and understand what is the longitudinal natural history of FOXG1 syndrome. How do these symptoms, when do they present, when do they start, and how do they evolve? So this is just an example from us. We look at all the common symptoms, we know when it starts, and we know, again, when it ends. And so this really helped us evaluate, okay, what are the most important endpoints that we should think about measuring? And also, where are our families really suffering? Okay, there's so much data I could show you, but I've tried to pinpoint it to a couple that could be useful. So For diseases like ours, the obvious primary endpoint is epilepsy. But when we were looked at our data in more detail, we saw that, looking at, we could model the onset of seizures, but we saw that seizure frequency really varied, especially as you got into like the, older age groups. And we realized that if this was our primary endpoint, there was a high chance it would fail just because the frequency was all over the place. But what we saw in medical records is that we had really, really stable baseline data for movement. So the ability to roll, the ability to sit, and the ability to walk was actually captured very systematically in medical records, and we saw really good trends across all of our segments of population. And then we were able to even break out the population by the different genotypes and by severity. And so this really became, the shift in our strategy, our clinical strategy, that we looked at these motor endpoints to be our primary, and we have moved seizures now to one of our secondary endpoints. So now we think about the comparator arm, and this is what we got FDA alignment for and what we were really excited by, that we looked at the motor endpoints and then we did different propensity score matching, but we really looked at how can we look at motor as a baseline. And so these are just two graphs that we submitted. We submitted a bunch of graphs to the FDA. The first one is the probability of achieving unsupported sitting. And so now we know, based on age, what is the probability that a child should sit or not sit. So in our clinical trial now with our gene therapy, if we see any movement, we know that that's drug effect. The second one is the probability of achieving independent walking. And again, we did propensity score matching. So based on a severity score, which we've matched each of our candidates that come into the trial, we know what their specific comparator should be. And that's what we have FDA alignment, that we could actually use this data. And so we don't have a placebo for our clinical trial. Okay. Actually, before I get into helping families day to day, the other exciting thing is that we also have FDA alignment on this can be a phase 1 to 3 clinical trial. Again, it all comes down to, does the drug work? Will we see any movement? But if we do, we have enough substantial data that we can avoid that expensive phase 3 and get to a BLA approval. And again, this is not an accelerated approval. This would be a real approval for this clinical trial. I'm going to now move into how we help patients day to day with AI Advocate, just to give you an idea of how we can also collect data that happens between visits to the doctor. But I want to stop here and just see if there's any questions.
Any questions in the room? Looks like there are no questions. I have a question.
Sure.
So, looking at these two charts, sitting and walking, tells me immediately FOXG1 is a more severe syndrome than KS, because most of our kids walk, most of our kids sit independently. So what would you suggest in terms of, if we're just off the top of your head, I know you don't expect you to go into our medical records right now, right?
Yeah.
But if you're thinking about something with syndrome that doesn't have KS, don't get me wrong, has challenges with movement for sure, but maybe not as severe as this. What would you think about in terms of pulling from medical records circumstance would you have any thoughts off the top of your head of kind of what might be something that you would expect would show up in medical records with high fidelity, but would be more appropriate for, at least in mobility terms, a less severe, I'll say generally a less severe condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm just trying to find, so it would come down to what are the most common symptoms. This is what came out for us. I know with other less severe conditions, we are looking at things like behavior. Actually, we do see behavior, for example, come out quite consistently in medical records. So there's another disease group we're looking at that is using behavior as one of their baseline endpoints. Communication is another one. So again, I don't know enough about Kleefstra syndrome, like to go into the medical records, but it would be what can be measured. And it's interesting because even when we looked at what we're studying in the perspective in our prospective trial and the clinical trial, we actually looked at what scale could match to what we see in the medical record. So we really had the end in mind that we really need to use the medical record as a baseline. So let's find in the medical record what is most stable. And so again, I haven't looked at Kleefstra syndrome, but that's the work that would need to be done.
Okay, thanks. Okay, there is another question in the room. Hold on a second.
Thank you, Nasha. And I think I'll take a playbook. Can you see me now?
I can, yeah, I see you. I sort of see half of you.
I'll ask my question here to you in the audience. But no, it's, first of all, congratulations. You've done incredible work in putting together Citizen Health, and obviously you're very involved in the FOXG1 community. I'm curious because I know you've worked with many different rare disease communities. Are there others where you've like that one slide where you showed 9% participation? Do you have other examples of like that high of a participation rate? And then I guess ask either Eric, you or Jeff, like where are we right now within the KS population? Because it'd be great to see us get a higher number. But Nasha, I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, no, FOXG1 is not unique in participation. This is the participation we see across the board. And
That's
Jeff,
great.
I don't know if you know the number of how many patients from your community we have on right now.
To answer the question, when you say participation, Nasha, do you mean the people who signed up with Citizen and participated in allowing their records to be used, or do you mean percent participation of your entire community that you know of?
Yeah, both. So for us, our consent rates on Citizen, consent rates are at 99%. So the majority of, basically all patients that come on to Citizen are consenting for their de-identified data to be used in research.
Right. Yeah. So I think in that sense, we're probably in a very similar range. My understanding is that essentially for KS, it's been the same amount of consent. Now, if you were to look at how many people in the U.S., right? Yes. So we know in our map of almost 400, and we have 175 right now. Okay. So we need to get there.
Roughly 40%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I guess with the other examples you have in the rare disease community, is that 40%? Is that average? Is that below average? Just kind of curious to know how you try to drive participation. Maybe the question was more about participation than it was consent.
Yeah, no, I love that you asked this question. So we are seeing that about 45% is the average, but now we're seeing that average increase. And I'm going to show you why, because of this new tool that's come out to help patients day to day.
Great.
So our goal is to get to an 80% participation.
Great. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us more about the AI features?
Okay, all right, good. Okay. So, as we're waiting for these life-changing drugs to come down the pipe, we are struggling day to day. And I found the stat to be pretty incredible that having a child in general is difficult, right? You hear so many parents like complaining about how difficult it is to manage work and childcare and all of this stuff. But if you're a rare disease parent, there's actually an additional 53 hours per work of parenting that we end up doing. And the burden is incredible, and it actually gets worse as our kids get older. So we have come out with a new AI agent named Ari, and we are rolling this out kind of community by community, and we've just rolled it out to Kleefstra syndrome. And this is really a tool to help families day to day. It is a teammate, it's a friend, it's your project manager. It's really the pillar that you can go to for absolutely everything. So I'm going to show you a demo, which really makes it come to life, but just to keep in mind the things that we are trying to help families solve. So one is just logging all of the symptoms that we go through. You have things like seizure tracker or other trackers, or a lot of us do things in Google Notes or Apple Notes or write notebooks, but we've created a way that you could just literally talk to your phone and everything gets recorded. And then more importantly than that is actually detecting patterns from what you're recording. And, someone in the last session was asking, hey, if a a patient's going through something that's slipping through the cracks and, their doctor's not letting them know. These are the types of things that we are already seeing RE bring out. So patients will be logging their symptoms, and then RE will actually say, hey, you should probably talk to a doctor. These are the questions you should ask. Like, RE is actually helping families understand when they're going through something that needs further medical attention. Most of us see multiple specialists. We have multiple MyCharts. RE is really helping organize, and it can connect to MyChart. It creates a to-do list and goes through that with families on a daily, weekly basis. Medication reminders, we have to push this out because make it a topic, because all of us scramble last minute when we realize we are out of medication. And then this becomes the one source of truth. So you have the medical record, which is that rich base of information, but then it's all of what's happening daily. Okay, so this is just for you to keep in mind as I show you the demo. And so I'm going to switch my screen to QuickTime. Give me 1 second. Sorry, maybe 1 second. Oh, it's not working. Okay. You're not seeing my screen, are you?
Okay. No, not seeing it right now.
All right, give me one. Please talk amongst yourselves. Okay, here we go. This is it. All right. Do you see it now? The screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Although
great.
It's not showing anything yet, but probably because you haven't started playing.
I haven't started it. No. Okay,
Okay,
great. All right.
good.
All right. Good. Okay. All right. So let's
Yeah, that's working.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So first of all, this is a phone, in case you didn't know. And one of the things about RE is this is over text messaging, so you don't have to open an additional app. There's a web portal I'll show you, but so this is all over text. So this is when someone new on board. So this is a caregiver named Maya. Her daughter is Vivian, and she's just onboarded. During onboarding, we ask what's most important. And Maya's mentioned that research is important. So Ari's going to first say, all right, so you're focused on research. I'm going to spend some extra time, digging into that for you. But first, tell me about your child. And so, again, this is very conversational. So Maya's going to say Vivian's 3. She loves music. She has Fox G1. And here, this is where a big part of us is going community by community. So there's also shared information, and families feel like they're at a place that understands them. So immediately it's saying that there's 672 families on RE. You're not alone. And what are your biggest challenges? Okay, so she's going through, I got a lot of challenges, seizures, sleep, etc. You'll notice that RE, again, very conversational, is going to have empathy, but not overly, you're carrying a lot. Let's go through that. I want to make sure we're tracking everything. Have you connected with a neurologist? Yep, I've got an appointment coming up. Okay, great. I'm going to help you prepare for that appointment. Let's help you track some of your symptoms. So first it's going to ask, hey, why don't we connect to a portal? And so the portal connection is super easy. It's going to send a link. Maya's going to be able to put her credentials in, and then the portal is connected. Ari can then go and pull all doctor's appointments and start reminding Maya when she's got upcoming appointments. And then this also helps Ari know, when do I need to start preparing Maya for the appointment? Okay. The other thing is, and this was a feature, and so right now we're in a phase beta, and a reason for that is so we can get feedback to see what's important. A feature that came out loud and clear is we need to connect to Google Calendar. So we've connected. So here you could see this is Maya's Google Calendar. There's a lot of stuff, but right now Ari is just going to go and pull the medical appointments. If you want, if Maya wants it to pull other things, it can, but right now it's pulling medical appointments. All right, great. So now it's asking, let's start tracking. What are the things that you really need to track? It's going to remind Maya that Ari could do much more than track sleep. And so again, because we're sitting on this base of really rich information, it knows the other symptoms that the average FOXG1 child is going to have, and it shows that to Maya. What else does Vivian have? Is she focused on anything else? Okay, for Maya, it's sleep, it's seizures. Great. Now it's going to ask, when should I tap in? When should I text you to check in? 8 p.m. Great. So every day at 8 p.m. now, Ari's going to text Maya, anything happened today, etc. And so you could see Maya's going to start, every day giving more information. And this helps Ari understand Vivian a lot better. Here, you don't just need to text, you could just talk to the phone, and Ari will take that voice note, it will summarize it, synthesize it, and tag everything in it. Okay. We're going to keep going. This is how Ari builds the, understanding of who Vivian is. And then 2 weeks later, Ari has a much clearer understanding. And so we could start discovering trends. And there's trends that, the average caregiver is not going to pick up. So it's going to remind Maya, hey, you've got this appointment coming up. And guess what? You may not realize it, but her sleep's actually better. It's down 2.1 wakings a night, but her seizures are up 25%. So, that's something to mention, and you could see the full trend. So this is the web portal, and you could see everything that Maya has been talking to the phone has been recorded, everything is tagged, and this is all without Maya having to do anything but just talk to her phone or text the phone. All right, we'll keep going. Okay, so now Ari's going to synthesize this and put a prep doc ready for her. So when she has a meeting with her doctor, she's prepared. It's also over PDF, it's in her phone. So in the appointment, Maya can just tap it. And so it's got the main things that she's tracking, and it also has questions. Then Ari's going to ask, look, this is all prepared. Why don't we send it to the doctor first? So your doctor's also prepared. That would be great. And without Maya having to do anything, Ari can go into my chart and send this message to the doctor. So this is just, one example. Let me go back to the presentation real quick, and then we can do Q&A as well. Give me 1 second. So, that was one example of tracking symptoms, etc. There's so many other ways Ari can help with insurance denials, finding government benefits. I wanted to give one example of literally a delight I had with Ari. And I'm having a debate with Amara's doctor on titrating cenobamate, which is an epilepsy med. Ari knows this because Ari is able to look at my messages in my chart. And also I'm tracking cenobamate titration with Ari. Ari noticed that there was a study in epilepsy, not something I'm reading every day. And it noticed that they were talking about cenobamate titration. So it finds this article, finds the relevant parts of the article, and gives it back to me, and then connects it with the debate I'm having with my doctor. And it says that, hey, your doctor's approaches actually make sense because that's where we're seeing the best effects. So this is what I'm talking, to me, I was mind blown by this. Ari was seeing what I was doing. It found something, it connected it. It was proactive. This is the kind of help that families need. And so with Ari, we're starting to see families that were not interested in joining Citizen, even for their medical records, are now joining because they're getting this day-to-day help. And then it's easy for them to say, yes, I also consent to have my records shared for research, and we'll be able to basically capture a much broader population. One last example, I talked to you about to-do lists. This is a family that went and posted this on Facebook. They were so excited. And you could see the amount of things that Ari is helping a family with, right? Their weekend review, their neurology visit, monitoring blood pressure, an ER visit, UTI cot, a clonidine taper, bowel movements. That's a big one, by the way. A lot of people track bowel movements, adding care team, et cetera, et cetera. And then Ari will always say at the end of the week, what are the things in progress that we're still doing and what's coming up? And so you could start seeing that this is the teammate that is really, honestly, just taking that weight off of caregivers. I always say that, look, if you were a billionaire, you would have a team of people doing this, making sure that your kid was, everything was taken care of, all the stuff with you. That's what Ari is trying to be. Okay, I'm going to